Hello out there, this is Andreas and I'll be teaching you in how to use Adobe Bridge and how to use Lightroom Classic. Okay, so first of all, this session is about photos and editing a lot of them and selecting a lot of them, finding out which ones are the proper for the right situation. This is already relevant for someone like me. Besides teaching in editing pictures, I also actually use it myself for my company running a bar, a nightclub. As you can see here on Facebook, we upload a lot of pictures all the time from the different parties. We make sure there's a photographer for each night at the nightclub. So next day they can actually go in and see their party themselves in that situation and so on. And to be sure that we get the best pictures and the pictures that people actually want to see of themselves, we need to select first which pictures were the correct ones to use by using Adobe Bridge to select pictures, or using Lightroom Classic to select pictures. And also, of course, edit the pictures so they look professional and in a specific style that matches the theme of the event, or the brand of the nightclub. Okay, so to start this off with, I would like to say that I structured this tutorial in how to use Lightroom Classic, especially based on the video on LinkedIn Learning called Learning Lightroom Classic. So in order to get a logical sequence of how I'm going to tell about these things, I was inspired by this video, Learning Lightroom Classic, which I watched yesterday evening, just to be 100% updated. I'm using Lightroom Classic all the time, at least twice a week. I'm going through a lot of pictures using Lightroom Classic. I mainly use Lightroom Classic for the editing part, not as much the library part, where you select pictures, flag pictures, label pictures, review them to make sure which ones are best, and select those ones before editing. Actually, that part I do myself in Adobe Bridge, but I'll show you just a few things about how to do so in Lightroom Classic as well. But that's mainly what I actually use Bridge for. But I'm not telling you what to do. You can choose for yourself if you want to use Bridge for selecting pictures and reviewing pictures, or you can do the same thing in Lightroom Classic. I'll leave that to you. After having watched this Learning Lightroom Classic, if you decide to watch that, you'll get some of the same information that I do give you in this video. But the library part will be somewhat more extensive in the LinkedIn Learning tutorial that you see in front of you. You could decide to dive even further into Lightroom Classic by watching a video called Lightroom Classic Essential Training. You can find that on LinkedIn Learning as well. There we go. And you see this video is 3 hours and 41 minutes long. So it's more extensive in how to use the different capabilities of Lightroom Classic. But let's get into using Adobe Bridge. I'm looking forward. I'm not sure about you. Let's do it. Okay, so to work with these programs, Adobe Bridge and Lightroom, I prepared some files for you. This is from one of the events we had at Roggen, which is Santa and his helpers visiting Roggen from that event. It's just a few pictures, I think I shot, like 20 pictures, deleted a few of them, so these are the few that were left. deleted those few on the camera while shooting the pictures. I'm gonna delete some more with you inside of Bridge. And you know, in general, when having these events at Wagen, I actually index them inside a folder for that month. You see, this is, for example, October 2021, and we have a lot of files here for each and every event held at Wagen. But every month I have a folder called Photos for that month, and you can see just how many pictures that's actually located in here. Normally when I shoot, I act as a photographer at Wagen as well as being the manager. Normally when I shoot pictures, I shoot like somewhere between 100 to 500 pictures. Some of them I delete on camera, some of them I delete when I get home to edit the pictures. And you know, eventually it will be narrowed down to, let's say, like 100 pictures, so it's not too many pictures on Facebook when I upload them. And so this is just for each and every night that we have our openings, we'll have pictures shot specifically for that day. So this is just one of the nights at Wagen, and this is just for a short event that lasted like 15 minutes. And we'll be editing those pictures and selecting which ones to use first. So you can find these pictures and use them as we go along inside of Adobe Bridge and Lightroom Classic. Okay, so let's open these up in Bridge. And the way we do that is, you know, there's different ways to do this. You can either, if you're on a Mac, you can actually just drag one of the pictures down into the Bridge icon, and then it will open up that specific folder. You could also locate them by simply going into your favorites over here, clicking desktop, then finding the folder on your desktop, and that way getting in touch with your files. Okay, your Adobe Bridge might not look the same as mine, so let's just make sure that everyone has Bridge set up the same way. To make sure we have that, we go to Window, Workspace, and we simply make sure that it's Essentials. So I'll click Essentials, and after that I'll switch inside the Workspace, I'll switch it to Reset. So that way everyone should have the same workspace. And for me, this is just too much room for my favorites and these different panels over here. I prefer actually to have the content to be much bigger. So I'll just drag in between these two frames. I'll just drag that so that these panels at the left become smaller, more narrow, and I'll do the same on the right. Some people like the preview panel to be bigger. I prefer mine to be not that big, and actually I'll just click a picture and we can see then a lot of information appears, and I actually like to see more metadata and keywords appear down here. So I often have my preview to just be a small part here. I actually don't use the preview part that much. Instead I actually click a picture and then click my space bar on the keyboard so I get it in full size. So this is how I like to view my pictures. You can, inside of Bridge, you can decide how big your thumbnails will be by simply just dragging this zoom bar. You can also decide if you wanted to view it as a grid. So that's really a preference, and you can decide what information appears when viewing them just down here at the bottom. So it's up to you how you want to view them. I normally view them like big thumbnails, so I have a clear indication of what's going on the picture. But like I said, that's really up to you. Okay, so when going through these pictures, I can choose to label them give them stars depending on, you know, how good I think they are. I can label them with colors, and afterwards I could filter them. I'm not really using export much inside of Bridge. Instead, I always use filter. So filter is going to help me a lot when I'm reviewing pictures, which one will I use, and so on. So if I have 200 pictures, it's nice that I can actually, you know, give them 1 star, stars, 5 stars, and so on, and afterwards filter them so I only see pictures that have been starred. Um, yeah. So okay. So for example, this picture, I know for a fact I'm not going to use that. Every time I start shooting pictures, I always shoot one picture just to check if my flash is on, if I have the right settings, and so on. So this is actually just a picture, the first picture being shot, just to see if my settings were correct on the camera. So this picture, I know that I'm gonna, you know, throw out. That's for sure. So if you want to throw out a picture inside of Adobe Bridge, you can simply, if I want to delete it permanently, you can just click Command and then delete. Then it's gone. It's in your trash bin. Okay, so now what I'll be doing, you know, I could either select pictures this way. Some people like to have their preview much bigger, so they put up the preview like this, so they can see a bigger picture. So going through the thumbnail view, viewing the preview out here, the preview panel out here on the right, I prefer to see the picture in full size, so I always click spacebar instead. And so it's really up to you how you use your workflow, but you could be using the preview instead to evaluate if the picture is good or not. So okay, so I'll be going through these pictures in Adobe Bridge, and why would I use Adobe Bridge to do this? Wouldn't I just use preview, billedfremviser? Why wouldn't I do that? Well, Adobe Bridge and Lightroom Classic, for that sake, has, you know, this built-in engine that makes it much faster viewing for pictures that are, you know, big, which take out a lot of space on your computer. The viewing is much faster in Bridge or in Lightroom Classic than it is in picture in preview. So it's going to be much faster for you to go through these pictures. If you use preview, you'll notice that it has to load the picture. It has loading time for each picture if you go through them, and they're 5 megabytes big, every one of them. So this is just much faster to use Adobe Bridge. If it is lagging when you're scrolling through these, you probably need to perhaps restart your computer, or you know, close down some of your applications if you have 15 applications turned on. If it's still lagging, then perhaps it's because you have a really old computer. But okay, so like I said, I'll just start out from the start here. And okay, so I'll actually perhaps rate these. I think this has some qualities to it, so perhaps I'll say this needs a star. I'll just give this 1 star. And you notice down at the bottom left, I just gave this 1 star. It's rated 1 star now. And to do that, I actually click Command 1. And if you click Command 2, it's going to give 2 stars. Command 3 is going to give 3 stars. 4 is 4 stars. And Command 5 is 5 stars. And you can also click Command 0 just to delete the amount of stars, so it's 0 stars again. There's also Command 6, which labels it red. There's Command 7, which labels it yellow. There's Command 8, which labels it green. And there's Command 9, which labels it blue. So if you want to remove the color, you can always click the Command button again. So Command 7 for yellow, and Command 7 again to remove the yellow. But to remove stars, it's Command 0. And you can both give it stars and a color, so that's not going to be a problem. I'll just remove both of them. I think this is, I'm going to label this with 1 star. I'm going to give this a 1 star review. Not saying that might not be a 5 star, but just start out, I'll just give every one of them stars, the ones that I like. So I think this has some qualities to it as well. There's a lot of fun stuff going on this picture. So I'll give it a star. This might have some qualities that are good, but whenever I see the back of a person on a picture and there's too much of it, or there's something on the picture that the person on the picture might not appreciate on social media, I would just not use that picture. So I'm gonna not choose this one, and this one is good perhaps, but it's the event was actually about this Santa coming in with his helpers. So perhaps this is not Santa and his helpers in focus. So perhaps I'm not going to use this one. This one is perhaps better because there's more of these Santa's helpers in the picture. So I'm going to give this 1 star as well. And I'm not going to comment on each one of these pictures. So I'm just going to continue giving stars. And okay, so this is perhaps okay. And okay, there's some beer going on here, and let's take this one, perhaps not this one. Let's take this one. This is great of this guy. And okay, so now I have those selected. Okay, so in order to just view the pictures that I actually rated with stars, I can click in my filter area. You can see now that there's an area with 1 star. Before I actually do that, I'm gonna make a folder. And I'm gonna call that reviewed. And I'm gonna give this folder 1 star as well. I just right-clicked and choose to make a new folder. And I'm gonna give this a 1 star rating as well, Command 1. And then I'm gonna select 1 star rated in filter. Thus, I actually have these pictures ready, and I also see the folder. The reason why I made this folder is because I'm gonna throw it in that folder in a second, and when I'm gonna use Lightroom afterwards, I can just open that folder and we have the pictures that I'm gonna edit. But let's see if I can even narrow this down even more. So now I'm gonna give them a second round, and I could either start giving 3 stars or 5 stars or whatever, or I could actually in my second round give it a color. So if let's say green color means okay, I'm definitely gonna keep this one. Well, then I'm gonna click Command 8 in order to say this is gonna be one of the pictures that I use. So and I decided, okay, this picture is actually not as good, so I'm not going to keep that. I'm going to compare these. This one is definitely better than this one, so I'm going to keep this one. And normally I would not keep a picture like this because the lighting is not as good, but this is actually, but perhaps these people would appreciate themselves being on Facebook the day after. So perhaps I would review this as being one I would keep. This has just a lot of back in it, so we're mainly actually seeing people's back and just half faces. So I'll probably not keep that, but this one is great. And however you select the pictures is really up to you. But for this picture would not be as great for the nightclub that I run, because there's a lot of empty glasses, and that sends a signal that our busboy is not fast enough to remove glasses from the table. So this could actually send a negative impression of our bar. So you have to estimate, okay, which is this picture so good that you actually want to keep it based on what negative qualities and positive qualities it has. And sometimes we just estimate that people would be so happy to see themselves on Facebook the day after that we actually choose to keep the picture, even though it perhaps have some negative qualities. That's up to you to estimate based on your values and how you define what to keep and what not to keep. This is definitely going in the book because this is, a happy guy from Tuborg. Okay, so I'll also label my folder with green, and now I'll also switch it to filter based on approved. And actually now I'll just select all of these. I'm holding down Command just to select all of them, and I'll just drag them into this folder right here. And I can turn off the filters now. No need for the filters because I have now a folder which includes the pictures I preferred. And okay, so Adobe Bridge can be used for a lot of stuff, and we're actually going to use it for the video tomorrow as well, which is going to feature how to use Adobe Camera Raw. Adobe Bridge is really something you use basically when using any Adobe program. You would often go into Adobe Bridge before actually starting to work on different files. You would use Adobe Bridge to select, assess, and just get an idea of the pictures or the videos and so on inside of your material. So Adobe Bridge is something you would use a lot of time, especially because it's so fast to view, to get a preview of pictures, so you get a general idea of the qualities of these pictures. But now we're moving on to Adobe Lightroom Classic. Okay, so let's open up Lightroom Classic. I'm going to open this up, and you notice that I have something already opened up inside of Lightroom, and I'm just going to make a new catalog. So I'll click File, New Catalog, and if you have never opened Lightroom Classic before, it will already ask you to make a new catalog when opening it. But we're going to make a new catalog, and I'm going to choose where to save it, and I'll actually choose to save it inside of the catalog itself. You could have a different procedure as to where to save it, but I actually prefer saving it inside of my photo area, the place where these photos are actually located. So I've made a folder called Reviewed. I made that inside of Bridge just a second ago, and I'll just put my catalog in here. So this one is going to be called XMAS Lightroom. Yeah. And I'll click Create, and it will close whatever catalog you had open already. A catalog is just, a way for Lightroom to have presets, modifications, alterations, and so on saved for what you wanted to make of changes to pictures. It's not actually any physical alterations to pictures. It's just a link to the pictures telling how you wanted to edit those pictures, and also which one you selected for that specific catalog. Lightroom is a non-destructive program, so whatever changes you make in here are non-permanent. You always choose to export, so it's not actually making any changes to the real files, the files we were just viewing in Bridge. It's not changing them, it's making new versions of them. So you always choose export afterwards, and thus the originals are not in any way damaged or harmed. So Lightroom and Lightroom Classic, for that sake, which is the one we're using now, is a non-destructive program. Okay, so in order to find these files, we're inside of the library view right now of Lightroom Classic, and you could just import pictures by going to the File, Import photos and video, it's exactly the same as clicking down here and import. So I'll just choose import photos and video, and it will show me a view of my desktop, and it's often searching in the wrong area. So you could just click up here to choose select the source, and you'll just I'll choose for it to search my desktop, and down here on my desktop, whoops, if I can just get it out right, I'll be able to find, what did I call it? Review. One second. I have a lot of things going on my desktop. Okay, so I'll go in here and I'll simply make sure that everything is selected. It's just really a few pictures. Normally I have like 100 to 150 pictures to look at here, the ones that I selected in Adobe Bridge. But we're making this easy. Okay, so these are selected. You know, if I decided not to use this one, I could just uncheck that. But in this case, I already reviewed them inside of Adobe Bridge. You know, Lightroom Classic really features a lot of review functions. So you could also consider, instead of using Adobe Bridge to make the reviewing, actually to use Lightroom Classic. And a lot of photographers actually do this. Instead of having to buy Bridge, instead of having to use two different programs, they actually do the reviewing inside of Lightroom Classic. But since I use so many different Adobe programs, it makes much more sense for me to use Adobe Bridge in general to do the reviewing, because I both use Adobe Bridge for Adobe Camera Raw, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, Adobe Lightroom, and so on. So it's just much easier for me to just in general stick to using one application for the reviewing. But just know that a lot of photographers will choose to do the reviewing inside of Adobe Lightroom Classic. The video that I showed you earlier in this tutorial from LinkedIn Learning about how to use Lightroom Classic features so much about reviewing. That's actually more than half the video. That's about reviewing inside of Lightroom Classic. So, but I'll just use my process to show this, and you can always decide to go into LinkedIn Learning and just seeing how could you actually review inside of Lightroom Classic. I'm gonna import these. And then you notice that you have a lot of different things on the left and on the right in the panels, and you also have some things in the toolbar down here where you can actually view full size, view two next to each other, and so on, and actually choose to view more pictures at once by selecting the preview more, and also find faces. So you could actually make keywords for what these people are named on the pictures. So if you have a lot going on your computer with pictures of a lot of people, with thousands of photos for each month, you could actually index it based on what the names of the people on the pictures are. So if it's family pictures, you could always find pictures of your niece because you index them based on name. Okay, so there's a lot of special features when it comes to using library to select and review, and it's just so extensive what there is of possibilities for viewing, selecting, and reviewing inside of Lightroom Classic. I'm gonna skip past that part, and instead I'm gonna go directly to the develop part, which is what I mainly use Lightroom Classic for, because there are 7 different modules up here, and to edit pictures, the module you'll be using in general is the develop module. So you'll be using the library to import, and you'll be using the develop to edit. Okay, so there's 5 different over here. Map, for example, you could get your geo location. Where was this picture shot? If the metadata is still intact, you could actually on a map see where in the world this picture was shot. And you know, there's also, if you want to prepare this for print, there's different formats for print. If you want to make a slideshow or a book, you know, you could set these pictures up to a book, so you could print it as a publication, and so on. And you know, but we'll just be focusing on the develop module. Okay, so inside of the develop module, you'll still have the same panel on the left, which is the navigator, and some and down here at the bottom you'll have the pictures that you're viewing. There are some things that have changed though. There's presets, and on the right you have all the different types of edits you can do to the picture. Okay, so we call this the develop panel, and sometimes it's just very confusing to look at all these different types of edit. You can fold these together, so you're only viewing one at a time. You could also right click to customize your develop panel, so you can switch some on and off. You can also choose which one goes first. So if I want transform to be above lens correction, you can put that above, and so on. Lens correction is something I often use, so I'll perhaps choose for that to be at the top. And detail is something I would often use, not as much as the tone curve. So you know, I could choose for them to be in a specific order, or you could turn it, go back to the default order. I'll just click save for this, and it's gonna ask me to relaunch. And you know, I have all the time in the world, so let's just do that. Okay, so again, in the develop panel, I have the histogram, and I have the basic, which the histogram I always have open, almost always have open, because this is a way of seeing how colors and light and darkness is located in my picture. Basic is the one that you'll be using the most, but one that you will often just use is lens correction. Lens correction is especially neat if you're using camera raw files. If you're using raw files, because if you save as a raw file, it will always remember all this metadata, so it will know which camera you used and which lens you used. So it will automatically show you which lens you use, and so by switching on this, it will actually change the picture to look better, because it knows, you know, how should the picture actually look based on which lens I was using. And also sometimes there'll be chromatic distortion. If you zoom in really close, I'm just gonna add the zoom tool to just zoom in more. Sometimes at the edges of pictures, there'll be something called chromatic aberration. I'm not sure I can find any on this one. Yep, here's some. you notice that there's some red at the edges right here. That's called chromatic aberration. And you could actually remove that. If some lenses, have a tendency to make some specific colored chromatic aberration, and it will know this based on the lens you used if you selected that lens. Since this is not a raw file, it might not make the best result out of removing the chromatic aberration, but as you noticed, it actually makes a better result, at least. In general, if you choose the right model for your lens in here, it's gonna make a better result. So some people would actually choose just to shoot in RAW to make sure that you could actually automatically find these profiles selected for you. But whenever I shoot pictures at parties, I always shoot them in JPEG. If I shoot professionally, let's say art-related photography, I shoot in RAW. So it really depends on the situation. When I shoot, a lot of pictures, like let's say 200 pictures just at a party, I really don't want to spend extra time downloading the pictures from the camera to the computer, and then afterwards spending much time editing huge pictures. So I only shoot in RAW when I'm dealing with pictures that's gonna be for professional use instead of just party use. So, but it's up to you. You can. Some people shoot in RAW all the time. Some people shoot in JPEG all the time. I would say it's based on your preference, but RAW files are better. They contain more depth. They contain more metadata. RAW files are better, but bigger. Yeah. So, but in general, I would switch these on if I had shot in RAW, and since I knew which camera I was using, I'm going to switch on the enable profile corrections and remove chromatic aberration, because it will always make the picture better removing the chromatic aberration. Okay. So out here on your left, you can actually toggle off visibility of your edits. So you can turn off the visibility to see which changes made. On this picture, the change is so small that I actually need to zoom in order to see it. If I zoom into this finger, then I can actually see that it makes changes. See that the bright red is just dimming down a bit when I turn on the visibility, but it's almost impossible to see that I actually made any change to this picture. This would probably be more noticeable if it was saved as a RAW, because then the lens correction, enable profile corrections, will have a bigger impact on the picture. So it's much easier to see that you can actually see changes to a picture if you choose something that's going to make a dramatic change to the picture. I'm just going to really try showing you something, a huge modification to the picture. And then you can see if I switch this on and off, you'll notice that it's a considerable difference. Also a way to see before and after is actually to hold down Shift Command and then click 7. Sorry, Shift Alt and then click 7, and then you can see before and after. So that's Shift Options 7, Shift Options 7, or Shift Alt 7. Another neat keyboard shortcut is Shift Command 7, which shows you the shortcuts inside of the develop module. If you're located in library, you'll see the shortcuts for library. Let's just Shift Command 7, and you'll see library shortcuts and so on. If you go to map and click Shift Command 7, you'll show the map shortcuts. So Shift Command 7 shows any shortcut that's located in that specific module. Okay, so I made some changes to this picture, and I could preview those by by clicking Shift Alt 7 before, after, and perhaps I found out that this is really not doing anything good for my picture. So I could either switch off the visibility of the tone curve adjustment to just not use that adjustment. The way I remove that adjustment is just simply by double clicking whatever header was for that change. So I'll double click region and it will just reset all the values. Likewise, if I made any changes in basic, I could just simply double click white balance to reset it. I can also double click a slider by just double clicking it. Boop, it pops back to normal. And so that applies to any slider. And if I made changes to tone and this is not good, I can double click tone and then it will just reset. There's also inside of the basic panel, there's also something called profile, which is camera related. So you would actually have a lot to choose from inside of here if you had saved it as a raw file. Then it would show specific profiles for that camera. But since this is a JPEG, everything is saved with some specific presets embedded into it. So you cannot go back and change those values. But you can still, in a JPEG version, select some different artistic presets that work with your JPEG picture. But you will have a lot more availability in your color profile if you had it saved as a raw file. But there are some presets for color profiles that could actually be added afterwards here without actually making any changes at all inside of your develop panel. Okay, so this, I would say, you have a much bigger range of available color profiles to add to your picture if you shot in RAW. So that's just something worth noticing. You can choose for it to be in color. You can choose for it to be black and white. If I change the temperature of a picture in black and white, it might actually improve the look of the picture. But notice that if I change it back to color, it will perhaps look really bad, too bluish now. So even though it might improve the how it looks in black and white, it might actually look very bad when I switch it back to color. I'll just double click white balance for it to reset. And okay, so generally when I edit pictures for Organ, for these party pictures, I use presets. A preset is actually just some edits that you find out that, okay, so this is in general how I want my pictures to look, and you simply save that as a preset. These values that I use right here, I'm probably going to use them again because this is the style overall that I'm going to use at Organ. So if you like some these changes to be the general look of your pictures, let's say I'm just going to make a lot of changes. You would like this to in general be how pictures look. Well, then you could go to presets. There's a plus button here and you can just create a preset and call this preset tutorial. And here you can choose whatever is it supposed to save from the changes I made in the develop panel. Well, I'll just make sure that everything goes with it. So I'm gonna click create, and down here at the bottom of my presets, well, perhaps not all the way to the bottom, down here in user preset, it has saved my preset called preset tutorial. So you notice here that I actually have a lot of different presets: defacing green, defacing green sharp lighter, defacing halfway, defacing mark and gotisk, late night fever, and so on. This is actually the one called Rocken indtil videre is actually the one that I'm using for now to edit all my Rocken pictures. So this makes it much easier for me, because every time I then take 100 pictures into the program, I know how overall the look is going to be by simply adding the preset Rocken indtil videre to all of the pictures. The zombie crawl pictures was a specific event. It had somewhat more reddish colors to it, so I made a specific preset for that event. And sometimes, I'll add specific presets for specific situations. Late Night Fever had a blue theme to it, which was an event at Rocken, so I made a specific blue preset. I've been doing a lot of stuff to this picture. If I ever decide that I want to go all the way back to whatever it was in the start, I could just click the big reset button down here. Boom. Then it goes all the way back. Just notice that anything that I changed in here will now be reset back to nothing. Some photographers prefer, before making any edits to a picture, to actually crop it. You have the crop tool right here, and you can simply just use that. So if you wanted this person in focus, you could simply just crop it. If you wanted this person to be part of it, you could just put, crop it as you want. There's also some, crop ratios that are specific for a lot of different platforms. You could choose them down here. And then you just drag your cursor around to choose whatever area is supposed to be in that 5:7 ratio. And if ever you decide not to use 5:7, you can just unlock that ratio and then start changing the ratio to fit your own needs. You can also, if the picture is crooked, you can change the angle. If you have a horizon which is not totally straight, you can just fix the angle. You could actually also rotate by going out to the bounding box and just rotating. Notice that in this area we also have the spot removal tool if you want to remove spots, and we have the red eye tool. Actually, the spot removal tool is a healing tool, so it will actually remove anything that's not a blend, a smooth area. I use this to remove numbers from the cash register, so people cannot see how much we've been making that night, because that's really not relevant to people. So I use the spot removal tool to remove numbers as well. Just because it says spot removal doesn't mean that that's the only thing it actually does. Just think about Photoshop and how healing tools can be used on pictures as well. You can always click on the crop to commence the crop, and you can click on crop tool again to see how it was originally. Remember, this program is non-destructive. It will never make any changes to the real picture. So you can always go back. So if you decide to change the crop, you can always change the values back to whatever it was originally, and you can simply just make it whatever you want. Okay, so I'm just gonna change back all the crop changes to my pictures by resetting it, and let's just focus on making a preset. So whenever I want to make a preset for my picture, it's going to be a series of pictures, and I want them all to have like the general the same general look. Well, I would, go into all of these different develop panels, and I would just figure out how is the basic settings going to be for that picture, how is the tone curve going to be for that picture, and so on and so on and so on. And simply just, adjust them until they have whatever vibe, you need. And since I'm always shooting at the same place, I'm shooting at Rocken, the general look is going to be the same because I'm shooting with the same camera and the same flash all the time. So it would be normal for me to have some fixed values that I know works well when editing these pictures. For example, I shoot in a very dark room. The Rocken is very dark and the ceiling is red. So whenever the flash pops up and shoots the picture is shot, it will have a really reddishness to it. So perhaps I would want to neutralize that reddishness. But actually, because red is one of our brand colors for Rocken, I actually keep the red intact in these pictures. Sometimes I try to dim it down a bit because it's too much, but in general I have actually don't try to neutralize that red. But there would be some values that I in general prefer, and I would just adjust until, for example, sometimes I add a bit more exposure, but actually it's more often blacks and shadows that I pump up and then reduce its exposure and add contrast. So I have I've learned that some things work when shooting down at Rocken, a lower exposure but a higher shadows and blacks value, and also because it somehow it makes an edge to the picture. I often use a vignette. So in the effects panel, I would add post crop vignetting. You see here you can add a vignette, and I would make it darker at the edges, and perhaps adjust the midpoint point. And I would not adjust the graininess because I don't want noise in my vignette. But perhaps this is how I want the edges to be. That creates kind of like a focus area. Perhaps I'm gonna add some sharpening. I would, when sharpening a picture, I would zoom in to just see what it actually does to the picture, and just see, is this improving the picture or is it just making it too sharp? You notice here, I'm just exaggerating right now. It's actually making pixels stand out from her nose and chin and so on. So perhaps this is too much, and but you can just try adjusting these values and see if they affect the picture positively and so on. But just remember, this will be added afterwards to all pictures because you're making a preset. So in general, if it's something I'm just adjusting for that picture, I would do it afterwards. So perhaps I'll just turn it down to 0 and check out afterwards if it needs sharpening. But perhaps you'll know that you always want your pictures to look sharper. Well, then perhaps adjust that value. So that goes for all the different panels, and I'm not going to go through all of these panels because there's really a lot of stuff you could do to pictures to improve how they look, or make a specific style to the picture. So I'll leave that to you. But whenever you figured out that this is the picture that you're gonna, this is the style you're gonna go with, you'll go to the plus inside of presets, and you'll just click create preset, and you'll just give it a name. Let's say this is Rocken for class. I'll just create that, and it will be located down here at the bottom. In alphabetical order. Since I know I'm not gonna be using this, I'm just gonna click delete for this. And okay, so the next part of this is actually, let's just ignore everything now in the develops panel over here and instead look at the presets panel. The great thing about the presets panel is actually that when you hover above a preset, it will show how the preset affects the picture. So I can simply just hover above a preset and it will show automatically what it does to the picture. And so actually the way that I often find my presets is not by making all these changes over here on the right in the develops panel, but instead actually by going through some of the existing presets. And you can open up the presets by simply just clicking the arrow next to it. And you can just go through it, and at some point you'll perhaps find something you really like, or something you like 80%. Well, if you like it a lot but not entirely, then perhaps it's a preset that you would like to modify and then save it as your own. So I'll just go through a lot of these. And as I recall, the one for the zombie crawl preset, I actually found that by going through all of these. And at some point I found a preset which already existed inside of Lightroom. I think actually it was this one, CN6. And then I just modified it afterwards and saved it as a new preset. But let's say, okay, so let's say this is the one I actually like. This one, perfect. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna use that. But it's not entirely perfect because it's too dark. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just make a few modifications in the basic panel. I'm gonna boost the blacks and boost the shadows and perhaps adjust the exposure. You know, whatever seems right for the picture. Exposure is really dangerous because it will easily look like the person has been overexposed. So perhaps I'm gonna adjust the contrast down a bit. And you know, perhaps this is how I want it. I'm just gonna change the clarity of the picture a bit. And perhaps adjust some vibrance values. Still looking a bit too dark. I think when I crop this will actually look bright enough. It seems very dark because there's so much darkness out here in that area. So let's just say this is how I want it. Okay, so I'll scroll up again in presets. I'll create a preset and say this is my preset, and just tell it to include everything. Okay, so now if I want to add this preset to all of the other pictures, you know, you can always switch between pictures by clicking your right and left arrow. And right now, this preset has only been included on my first picture. So if I want to include it to all the other pictures, I would need to select them. So I'll hold down Shift and click on the number 7, so everything is selected. Now every picture is selected, I can right click. I could actually also just click Sync over here, but I'll right click my picture number 1, which has the preset included. You can see that by these two small icons. I'll right click it and I'll choose Develop Settings, Sync Settings, and then simply just synchronize. You can actually choose what to synchronize on the other pictures. I'll just click synchronize and it starts updating down here. You'll notice now if I click on my right arrow, if I click on my right arrow, these pictures now have the same preset attached to it. And again, if you want to see before, you could always click Shift Alt 7 before, Shift Alt 7 after, and you'll see what this preset actually changed the picture. You can also see actually changes to a picture by clicking these in the toolbar. There are different ways to see before or after, left, right, you know, reference view, left, right, if you want to compare two different pictures. So you know, there's different options down here. I'll just go back to the original. And when having added this preset to all of the pictures, you could simply just you know, reset it back to the original by just selecting all of them and clicking reset. I'm going to click undo to that because I want this to be how my pictures look. So they now all have, I could go in and I could crop this specific picture so it looks like this, and you know, crop this picture so it looks like this. I'm using the rule of thirds right now. You could switch overlays by clicking O to choose different types of overlay. So there's just a lot of different overlays to switch between. I'll go back to rule of thirds. I think this is great. Click on the next picture. Crop this one as well. And you see this picture is actually very dark. So perhaps I'll just improve the exposure here, pull down the contrast a bit on this one, add some values, and you know, now it looks better. This picture definitely needs some cropping. And definitely needs some adjustments in basic, and you know, I could just keep going on. I'm not gonna do it for all the pictures, but I would definitely go through the pictures just quickly to see if they're cropped right or if they're too bright or too dark and so on. Okay, so the last thing I'll do is, if I need to include a watermark, you know, if there needs to be a logo on the pictures, I could go into Lightroom Classic, choose Edit Watermarks. I have some already saved for that. I have one of our photographer's logo, if he needs to use that. I had a zombie crawl logo, and in general I have the Roggen logo version 2. That's what I include on most pictures, which is just our company's logo located at the bottom right, with these values, an opacity of 30%, the size is 10, and it has an inset of 3, both vertical and horizontal, at the right anchor of the page, right bottom anchor. Okay, so this was as graphic. You could also choose for it to be text, so you could write something instead. So it says Andreas Nørgaard at the bottom. But this is really up to you. But if you wanted to include a watermark, it's in Lightroom Classic, Edit Watermarks. You know, if you wanted to save this, you could save current settings as a new preset, or you could simply click save. Okay, so now I want to export all of these pictures. So I'll select all, Command A to select all 7, and I'll just go to File, Export. Okay, so inside of File, Export, you can choose for it to save on the desktop or the same folder as the original photos, and you could choose for it to be put in a subfolder if you want inside of that. So let's just put it in the same folder as the original, but put it in a subfolder, and the subfolder will be named Lightroom. Okay, so you could rename the files to be the file name and the sequence, and it shows as an example what is going to be named down here. So so you'll see that it's going to show you the sequence as well, not just the name of the file, but also which one it is in the sequence. So this is going to be named 1393 and then 1 afterwards, and the others will be named 13, I don't know, 97 and then 2. And I'm just gonna skip video. This is not relevant right now. You could choose for it to be JPEG. That would be natural, but it also, it can also save as PSD. Color space, you can choose for it to be sRGB. That's for web. It could be Adobe RGB. It could be any other color profiles that you have installed on your computer. You could also resize it to fit so it's a specific dimension when you export it. One thing that's important here, metadata for some is important. Keywords, different information saved on the picture. Some would like to, include that when exporting, especially if there's some copyrights for the pictures. Also, I would say the most important thing here for me when exporting as a company is to include the logo. So in the watermark, I would simply choose for it to be switched on and then include Roggen logo version 2, which was the one I was just talking about. Okay, so at some point I think everything is ready and I'm ready to export, so I'll just click export. And this is actually, right now it's exporting files. You can see that up here, and your folder is gradually actually having pictures included to it. Right, 7 pictures take no time, but you notice that if I had 150 pictures, the folder is actively actually updating as more of them are exported. So I could view this inside of Adobe Bridge. I could simply choose Adobe Bridge to view this in. And since I have to find it in other right now, I'll instead just drag it down into Adobe Bridge. And here we can actually look at how these pictures look after having been exported with the watermark included. I think that's it for Lightroom Classic. I hope this gives you a good idea of how you can edit a lot of pictures at the same time by using presets that you created. Thank you so much and have a nice day.